Fritz was humming in the kitchen, which meant the morning had survived to its second cup of coffee without incident. Wolfe was behind his desk, half buried in the Oxford Book of Botanical Latin, and I was dictating the week's bills with one eye on the phone and the other on the clock. Routine, steady and comfortable. The kind of calm that never lasts longer than it takes the doorbell to remember its job. It remembered it. The chime cut through the brownstone like a clean razor. Wolfe lifted one eyebrow but didn't look up. I said, "Client or calamity? 2-to-1 odds." "Answer it," he murmured, eyes still grazing the page, "and spare me the commentary." I went and opened the door. The man standing there looked like he'd come straight from an argument with a conscience he hadn't won. Mid-30s, trim but sagging at the edges, hat in hand, knuckles white around an envelope. The smell of damp wool came in with him. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. The voice was polite but fragile, like he hadn't used it in a week. "That's right, and you must be someone who needs to see Mr. Wolfe. Please." His tone had that edge of desperation that gets past policy. I stepped aside, waved him in, and ushered him to the office. Wolfe marked his place with a leaf pressed into the book and looked up. "You may sit," he said, as if offering absolution. The man obeyed. His coat dripped at his feet, and he set the envelope on his knee as though it might explode. "Name?" I asked. "Caldwell. Leonard Caldwell." He swallowed. I was a clerk for Kestner and Dale. Importers." "Of what significance is that 'was'?" Wolfe asked. Caldwell flinched at the word. "I resigned yesterday." "Of your own volition?" Yes. No, I suppose not entirely." He opened the envelope and slid out a single folded sheet. It had the faint gloss of expensive stationery and the thickness of something too deliberate. He handed it to Wolfe with fingers that trembled enough to qualify as percussion. Wolfe didn't take it. He looked at me. "Archie." I crossed, took the sheet, and read it aloud. The handwriting was precise, almost feminine. "To whom it may concern, I have decided to tell the truth before others do it for me. L.C." That was all. No address, no date, no signature flourish. Just the initials. Wolfe said, "You wrote this?" Caldwell nodded. "Last night. I meant to destroy it this morning. Instead, I found it sealed on my desk. Mailed to me. By myself." That earned him a blink from me and a pause from Wolfe. "Explain," Wolfe said. Caldwell leaned forward. "I burned the note after writing it. Watched it curl to ash. Then, this morning, it arrived through the post. My handwriting, my envelope, everything. And someone knew, someone must have, what it meant." "What does it mean?" I asked. He wiped a hand across his mouth. "It means I was ready to confess to something that never happened." "False confession?" I said. "No, worse. I was going to take blame to protect someone else." "Who?" Wolfe's tone was pure stillness. Caldwell hesitated, as though saying it would materialize the person. "Miss Verna Dale, the senior partner's daughter." I looked at Wolfe. He didn't twitch. "And what, pray, was she guilty of that you felt compelled to exonerate her by suicide note?" "It wasn't a suicide note," Caldwell snapped, then caught himself. "I mean, it wasn't supposed to be. Just an admission. A lie, yes, but one I thought I could control." He fumbled the envelope, tore it open again as though the act might explain itself. "There's a second sheet now. It wasn't there before." He handed it to me. The paper was identical, but the message wasn't. "Leonard, you've had your chance to tell the truth. I'll do it for you. V." "Miss Dale?" I said. He nodded. "But she couldn't have written it. She's been dead 3 months. Even Fritz would have stopped humming for that one." Wolfe shut his book with a soft thud. "You are certain of her death?" "I attended the funeral." Then the note is either a forgery or a fabrication. Wolfe leaned back. Why come to me? Because whoever sent it wants me ruined, and because... His voice broke off as the telephone rang behind me. I caught it before the second ring. Nero Wolfe's office, Archie Goodwin speaking. The voice on the line was female, low and deliberate. Tell Mr. Wolfe he needn't bother. Leonard Caldwell's confession will be public by tonight. Click. I put the receiver down slowly. Wolfe's eyes narrowed a fraction. Who was that? She didn't say, but she sounded like someone who already bought ink by the barrel. Caldwell's face had gone gray. Then it started. Wolfe gestured to the chair. Mr. Caldwell, you will remain seated while Mr. Goodwin secures the door and instructs Fritz that we are indisposed. Then you will tell us precisely what Miss Dale could have been confessing to, and why her ghost writes better letters than you. He folded his hands. Gaze like a vice. And you will do so without evasions. Caldwell nodded, swallowed, and opened his mouth to speak, then stopped, his eyes fixed on the envelope. The edges were darkening, curling inward. Before I could reach it, the paper collapsed into a fine gray ash on his knee. Caldwell jerked to his feet, brushing the ashes off his trousers like they might bite. I caught his wrist before he could bolt. Easy, I told him. The carpet's seen worse crimes than spontaneous combustion. He tried to speak, but his throat had lost its nerve. Wolfe said, sit. Just that, and the man folded back into the chair. The single syllable had the authority of a courtroom gavel. I went to the window and cracked it for air. The faint smell of burnt paper drifted off the ash heap on Caldwell's knee. It wasn't much, but it was proof of one thing. Someone wanted him scared enough to talk. Wolfe reached for the bell cord. Fritz. The door opened before the echo died. Yes, sir? Our guest requires brandy. Mr. Goodwin will take a small measure. I will abstain. I took the glass when it came because not taking it would have been ungrateful. Caldwell didn't touch his. He stared at the faint smear of ash on his fingers as if it spelled his obituary. Mr. Caldwell, Wolfe said. Who else besides Miss Dale could have access to your handwriting and stationery? No one. I wrote that note at my apartment. I burned it myself. Precisely, Wolfe murmured. Yet someone duplicated both. Either they observed you, or you are lying. Caldwell's eyes snapped up. I'm not lying. Why would I come here if I were? For the usual reasons, Wolfe said. Fear, guilt, vanity, or a misplaced faith in your own cunning, which I assure you would be misplaced. I said, let's assume for a minute you're honest. Why write a confession at all? He hesitated. Because I thought Verna was being framed. For what? For stealing from the firm. Shipments went missing. Invoices altered. Her father blamed an overseas agent, but I saw the ledgers. Someone inside was doctoring them. And you decided to play knight-errant? I asked. He nodded once, eyes fixed on the ash. She asked me to trust her. Said if it came to light, I should claim responsibility, that it would protect her father's reputation. I agreed, but she died before it happened. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. Convenient. How did she die? Accident. Fell from a balcony at her father's country house. I said, that's one of the clumsier ways to stop a scandal. It was ruled accidental, he insisted. But now someone's reviving it, and me with it. The phone rang again, sharp, like it had been waiting for the cue. Wolfe gestured, and I picked it up. Nero Wolfe's office. There was a pause, then a man's voice, curt and familiar. Kramer, Wolfe there. I handed it over. Wolfe frowned. Yes, Inspector. I hope your client's name is Leonard Caldwell. It is, Wolfe said. Good. Tell him to stay put. We just found a body in a car outside the Kestner and Dale warehouse. Identification says Leonard Caldwell. Caldwell went white. I mouthed, not funny to Wolfe, but he ignored me. Inspector, Wolfe said mildly, your information is in error. Mr. Caldwell is sitting before me. Then you've got a puzzle, Kramer growled, because the stiff in the car's got his wallet, his face, and his signature on a note. The note says, "I killed Verna Dale." Wolfe's eyes closed halfway, thoughtful. And you believe it? I believe in fingerprints and dental charts, not ghosts, Kramer said. But your man better have a story ready. He will, Wolfe said, though it may take me a day to write it for him. He hung up, slowly. Caldwell's voice came out in a whisper. Someone's using my name to bury you twice, I said. Once in rumor, once in reality. Wolfe gestured toward me. Archie, the newspaper files. Miss Dale's death, 3 months past. Names of attendees, statements, coroner's verdict. Mr. Caldwell, you will remain precisely where you are until I return. Caldwell managed a nod. Wolfe rose, which meant the matter had passed from curiosity to engagement. Mr. Goodwin, he said, bring your notebook. We are going visiting. That was my cue to blink. Visiting? You mean out? He gave me a look that could prune roses. If someone has appropriated Mr. Caldwell's identity, the locus of such enterprise is not within these walls. You're going to leave the house? I'm going to the door. Beyond that, I make no promises. He reached for his hat, looked at it, and let it fall back on the rack. You will drive. We left Caldwell in the red leather chair, eyes hollow. Fritz gave him a look of pity and went to fetch another brandy. Outside, the city was slick with rain, the kind that made taxis sound apologetic. I got us to 38th Street without incident, though Wolfe treated every puddle as an affront to civilization. The Kestner and Dale building squatted behind police tape, its windows black. Kramer was waiting under the awning, coat collar up, face like he'd been weaned on vinegar. Well, the orchid man himself. I'm here in the interest of truth, Wolfe said. That'll be new around here, Kramer muttered. Come take a look. We ducked under the tape. The car was an old Packard, parked nose first into a lamp post. Inside, the body slumped sideways. The face was swollen, but not beyond recognition. Even Wolfe inhaled once. It was Caldwell, or at least his twin. Identification? Wolfe asked. Everything matches. Wallet, keys, handwriting on the note. Prints match the employment card from Kestner and Dale. Then your official dead man is my living client. Unless your client's a ghost, Kramer said. You sure he's in your house? Positive, I said. He's enjoying Fritz's best brandy. Then who's this? That, Wolfe said, is what we must discover before dinner. He leaned forward, examining the note on the seat. You've touched it? Kramer scowled. Of course not. Forensics just finished. You can read it. I used a pencil to lift it closer, the same feminine hand as before. I killed Verna Dale, and I can't live with it. Forgive me. Leonard Caldwell. The paper smelled faintly of lilac. I glanced at Wolfe. Same stationery? Yes, he said, and the same illusion of confession. Kramer folded his arms. You saying this guy forged his own suicide? I'm saying, Wolfe replied, that someone has crafted a convincing impersonation, and that the impersonator had access to private materials, both Mr. Caldwell's and Miss Dale's. Which means, Wolfe said, the living Caldwell is in danger from someone who prefers their victims to come pre-signed. Kramer grunted. You'll share what you find? When it is digestible, Wolfe said. We left him glaring at the rain. I started the car, and Wolfe sat silent until the street lights blurred into gold streaks. 2 Caldwells, 1 dead, 1 framed, I said. What's your move? He tapped his fingers on the armrest. Observation. Mr. Caldwell will be safer under surveillance. You will telephone Saul and have him relieve Fritz. Fritz won't like a tale in his kitchen. He will endure it, and you will return to Kestner and Dale's records office. I require Miss Dale's handwriting, if possible, and her father's correspondence for the last year. Breaking and entering. Borrowing, Wolfe said. Our client's liberty demands elasticity. Back at the brownstone, Fritz met us at the door with eyes like warning lights. Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Caldwell is gone. Wolfe froze. Gone? Yes, sir. His hat and coat are missing, the brandy untouched. I felt it like a punch to the stomach. Wolfe exhaled through his nose, slow and cold. Then, Mr. Goodwin, our client has just joined his double. Fritz's voice had barely died when Wolfe turned toward me, the movement slow but heavy enough to bend gravity. His lips didn't tighten. They compressed, like a vault door sealing. You saw him when we departed? Alive and jittery, I said, and not the type to go sightseeing. Fritz? Wolfe's tone was clipped. He received a telephone call. Fritz said quietly. A woman. She asked for Mr. Caldwell. I told her you were both out. She said she was Miss Dale. That landed hard. Wolfe's head came up an inch. And he overheard? She spoke loudly. He was by the hall table. I turned to fetch him water, and when I returned, he was gone. I said, she told him she was dead, remember. That should have been a hint. Wolfe ignored me and moved, one deliberate step to his desk, another to the phone. He pressed a button. Operator, I require Mr. Solpanzer. Yes, hold. He glanced at me. You will find Mr. Caldwell before the police do, if possible. You think he went to meet her? I think he was summoned. The line clicked. Wolfe spoke into the receiver. Saul, retrieve a photograph of Leonard Caldwell from my desk. The man may attempt to contact a woman using the name Verna Dale. Begin with his residence. Report every 10 minutes. He hung up. Archie. Hat. That was fast for him. I grabbed it before he changed his mind. Where to? Kestner and Dale. We will speak with Mr. Dale himself. I stared. At this hour, you think he'll open the door? He will if his dead daughter is. Making telephone calls. The cab's tires hissed through the wet streets. Wolfe sat beside me like an iceberg with a pulse, hands folded on the cane he didn't need. I could feel the logic brewing under his silence, ticking like a clock in a sealed room. When he finally spoke, it was to himself. 2 identical men, 2 identical notes, 2 invocations of confession. If it is not coincidence, it is orchestration. And the conductor, I asked. Someone with access to intimacy, Miss Dale's confidence, Mr. Caldwell's handwriting, and enough theatricality to merge them. The cab stopped in front of a townhouse with more brass than warmth. The Dale nameplate gleamed under the light like it had been polished out of gilt. I rang. A man in a robe opened the door. The face had money written on it in deep, irritated lines. If you're reporters, I'm Goodwin, I said. This is Mr. Wolfe. His expression shifted from offense to alarm. Wolfe, the detective? My secretary said you retired. I did not, Wolfe said. You will oblige me by answering several questions before your sleep resumes. We followed him inside. The house smelled of stale perfume and good carpets. He poured himself a drink before we sat. His hands weren't steady. If this is about the warehouse death, it is about your daughter, Wolfe said. Dale froze mid-pour. What about her? She has telephoned my house. The glass hit the table. That's absurd. Indeed. Yet a man who once loved her has vanished after hearing her voice. Dale blinked, and I watched something small and cold flicker behind his eyes. Caldwell. I warned him to stay away. He was obsessed. Was he also expendable? Wolfe asked mildly. I beg your pardon? Wolfe leaned forward just enough for the air to change temperature. Your daughter's death was deemed accidental. She fell. Did you accept that verdict? His jaw twitched. She was ill, nervous. The pressure of business. Ah, Wolfe said softly. A convenient diagnosis. Mr. Dale, your firm's ledgers. Who besides you and Miss Dale handled them? Caldwell, and one other. Miss Farrow, my assistant. She still employed? Yes, though she's been distraught since the accident. Distress manifests in curious ways, Wolfe murmured. Have you heard from her tonight? No. Then I suggest you try. I caught on. You think she's our phantom caller? Wolfe didn't answer. He was already standing, which meant the man had said enough to make the theory solid. Dale looked like he wanted to protest, but one look from Wolfe turned him into silence. Back in the cab, I said. So we've moved from ghost to secretary. Do not trivialize, Wolfe said. Miss Farrow's proximity to both victims renders her indispensable. If she forged the letters, she must have had access to their handwriting and correspondence. Both existed at Kessner and Dale. She could have pocketed samples. Yes, or been instructed to. I frowned. By who? Dale. Possibly. His daughter's affair with Caldwell endangered the firm's respectability. A double erasure, one by death, one by fraud, would resolve the inconvenience neatly. But he didn't sound like a man running a scheme. He sounded scared. Fear does not preclude guilt. It merely indicates recognition. The rain eased to a drizzle. When we reached the brownstone, the door was unlocked. That was not Fritz's habit. Inside, the lights burned low. A thin scent of lilac hung in the air, the same perfume from the suicide note. I drew my gun. Wolfe raised a finger. Silence. We moved through the hall. Caldwell stood by the Globe bar, alive but looking like he'd misplaced his soul. The phone dangled from his hand. I holstered the gun. Congratulations, you're the most punctual missing person in Manhattan. He turned. She called again. Verna? I asked. He nodded. Said she wanted to meet. Said she'd explain everything. I was halfway out the door when she told me where. Wolfe's voice dropped an octave. Where? The old Dale warehouse. The same place the body was found. That froze the room for a second. Then Wolfe said, Archie. Already on it. I grabbed my coat. Caldwell tried to follow, but Wolfe stopped him with a look sharp enough to shave with. You will stay here. Fritz, confine him to the kitchen if necessary. Yes, sir. The warehouse sat like a bad conscience behind the river. I parked under a dead lamp and went in the side door. The air was sour with damp wood and oil. My flashlight caught a glint. Metal, small, deliberate. A voice followed it. You shouldn't have come alone, Mr. Goodwin. She stepped from behind a stack of crates, tall, precise, hair pulled tight enough to strangle thought. Miss Farrow. I remembered her from the ledgers, a face built for competence, not melodrama. Depends who invited me, I said. If you're handing out ghosts, I'll take 2. Her hand trembled around the gun. He ruined her, and now he pretends innocence. Which he are we shooting tonight, the dead one or the living one? I wrote the letters, she said. I wanted him to feel what she felt. Cornered, helpless. But I didn't kill him. That's thoughtful of you. I only wanted him afraid. She looked toward the doorway. But someone else came. Who? Before she could answer, a shadow moved behind her. She spun, but the shot came first, a flat crack that echoed through the rafters. She dropped before I could reach her. The shooter stepped into the light, Mr. Dale, face carved out of rage. She was going to ruin everything, he said. Congratulations, I said. You just did that yourself. His gun swung toward me, but a voice behind him halted it. Mr. Dale, Wolfe said from the shadows, that is both stupid and futile. The barrel wavered, then clattered to the floor. Wolfe stepped forward, calm as a bishop. Archie, call Kramer. Inform him he may collect his murderer and his motive. I will be in the cab. This dampness is intolerable. Kramer arrived with the sound of tires on wet gravel and enough profanity to raise the warehouse rafters. He took one look at Miss Farrow sprawled near the crates, the revolver beside her, and then at Dale, sitting on a barrel with Wolfe's handkerchief pressed to a superficial wound on his arm, and said, "You couldn't wait for me to start the party, could you?" "I assure you, Inspector," Wolfe said, "your timing is impeccable. Any earlier, and you might have been shot as well." Kramer snorted. "I'd have ducked. All right, let's hear it. Who killed who, and why am I here at midnight babysitting your crime scene?" I gave him the short version. Farrow, the forged letters, Dale's little act of rage. He scribbled in his notebook, glowering like each word cost him a year of his pension. "Fine," he said finally. "So Dale here admits he shot his own employee." "Why?" Dale looked up, face pale, voice rough. "She was blackmailing me. She found my letters to Werner, personal ones. Said she'd expose the affair and the missing shipments. She was going to ruin everything." "Your daughter's death included?" I asked. He stared at me. "That was an accident." Kramer grunted. "Sure, I've heard that one before. All right, Wolfe, what's the angle? You don't drag yourself out of your plant nursery just to play usher." "I prefer accuracy," Wolfe said. "You have one corpse too many, Inspector, and one identity too few. There are still questions unresolved." "Such as?" "Such as why Mr. Caldwell has a double." Kramer squinted. "You're telling me that Stiff in the Packard wasn't him?" "I'm telling you it was made to appear so. The face, yes. But the dental chart may say otherwise. You will verify it." Kramer eyed him warily. "And what if it does? Then you will have a murdered impersonator and a living witness whose survival offends someone very much alive." Dale let out a broken laugh. "You think I killed 2 people? I only wanted the threats to stop." "You succeeded," Wolfe said, "rather permanently." Kramer motioned his men to take Dale away. "We'll hold him. If he's lucky, the DA might downgrade it to manslaughter. But don't think I'm buying the mystery twin theory until the morgue says so." "Prudence is a virtue," Wolfe murmured. "But you may find your virtue inconvenient." When Kramer's crew had packed up, Wolfe turned toward me. "Archie, home." The cab ride back smelled of damp wool and gunpowder memory. Wolfe didn't speak until we turned onto 35th Street. Dale's act was precipitated, not premeditated, he said finally. He did not send the first letters. Then who did? Someone with motive unfulfilled. Dale's fear made him useful. Miss Farrow's passion made her reckless. Both are symptoms, not causes. I gave him a look. "And the cause?" He closed his eyes. "We shall ask Mr. Caldwell." At the Brownstone, Fritz had stayed awake, which meant anxiety had outrun decency. Caldwell was in the kitchen, hunched over a cup of untouched coffee. He looked up when we entered. "I heard the radio," he said. "They said there was another shooting." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Your employer has saved you the trouble of confession." Caldwell's face went slack. "Then it's over." "No." Wolfe sank into his chair, gestured for me to pour beer. "It is only clarified. You are alive, Mr. Caldwell, but not safe. Someone used your name to bury a stranger, your guilt to bait your conscience, and your fear to control you. Who benefits?" Caldwell stared into the steam. "I don't know." "You will." Wolfe lifted his glass. "Archie." I got the notebook ready. Wolfe's tone had settled into that low, deliberate register that meant the pieces were being placed. "Begin at the start," Wolfe said. "Your acquaintance with Miss Dale." Caldwell drew a breath. "I was hired 2 years ago. She managed the export accounts. Her father didn't trust computers, so everything was on paper. She was bright, curious. We worked late together." "Affection developed," Wolfe said. "Yes." "But it wasn't physical. She was afraid of her father. He controlled everything, money, decisions, even her friends. When she found the discrepancies in the ledgers, she panicked. She said someone was siphoning funds through a dummy account in her name. And she accused you? No. She thought I could help prove it. But the next week she was dead. Balcony? Wolfe asked. Yes. They said she slipped, but the railing was rotten, and after the funeral, I noticed my apartment had been searched. By whom? I don't know. I reported nothing stolen. Wolfe nodded once. Miss Farrow's attempt tonight suggests she knew portions of this but misread them. She blamed you for Werner's death. Convenient for the actual thief. Who? Caldwell's voice cracked. Patience, Wolfe said. Archie. The forged suicide at the warehouse. Same stationery. Same ink. The stationery was Dale's. Likely accessible to any employee. The ink, however, is another matter. Fritz keeps a small bottle for correspondence, does he not? He does, I said. German stuff you can smell from across the desk. Fetch it. When I returned, Wolfe had laid Caldwell's envelope beside the letter from the Packard on a sheet of glass under the lamp. The faint aroma matched exactly. Observe, Wolfe said. This ink is imported exclusively by the firm of Kestner and Dale, which implies our forger had more than opportunity. They had access to company imports. Caldwell frowned. That could be anyone in the accounting staff. No, Wolfe said. Not anyone. Someone who could order the ink without question. Someone who knew it would burn as it dried. I raised an eyebrow. Burn? He nodded toward the glass. The letter that ignited did so because of a trace reagent mixed with the pigment, a volatile compound used in watermark tests. Only a chemist or an importer of specialty goods would employ it. Mr. Dale's business partner, Mr. Kestner, fits both categories. Caldwell stiffened. Kestner? He retired last year. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. A convenient fiction. He remains a silent partner, does he not? I think so. I saw him once at the office after hours. Werner said he was handling foreign contracts personally. Indeed, Wolfe murmured. Then it is likely that Miss Dale discovered his manipulations, attempted to warn her father, and was silenced. Mr. Dale's conscience produced panic. Miss Farrow's affection produced vengeance. Mr. Kestner's ambition produced bodies. I whistled softly. And you're planning to prove all that without leaving your chair? I intend to summon him, Wolfe said. He will come, believing his scheme intact. You will make the arrangements discreetly. Caldwell swallowed. You think he'll kill again? If pressed, Wolfe said. But he will not find the opportunity here. The phone rang, sharp and timely. I answered. A crisp male voice said, This is Mr. Kestner. I understand Nero Wolfe is making inquiries into my firm. Tell him I'll be there within the hour. I covered the receiver. Speak of the devil. Wolfe's mouth curved faintly. Excellent. See that the front door is unlocked, but the alley gate barred. And Archie, bring the 38. I didn't argue. When I hung up, Wolfe turned to Caldwell. Compose yourself, sir. Within the hour, the man who impersonated your death will join us. I advise you to listen rather than speak. Caldwell nodded, pale but steady. Fritz reappeared with coffee and worry. Do you expect violence, sir? Only persuasion, Wolfe said. But persuasion is sometimes loud. The rain resumed against the windows, tapping like a metronome counting down to trouble. The clock's minute hand scraped its way toward 11 when the knock came. Firm, deliberate, with just enough pause between raps to announce that whoever was outside didn't make house calls without a retinue. I was halfway to the door when Wolfe said, Open it and step aside. I will receive him as one receives a creditor, standing but not smiling. I did as told. The man on the stoop was tall, dry as a ledger, and dressed like his tailor invoiced by the inch. His face carried the faint polish of wealth aged to indifference, but his eyes were too quick for comfort. Mr. Kestner, I said. He inclined his head. Goodwin, I expected someone heavier. Give me 10 years and a slower metabolism. I stepped back. Come in. Mr. Wolfe is waiting. He entered without glancing around, the kind of man who knew rooms obeyed him by instinct. Wolfe was behind his desk, motionless except for the rise of his fingers around the chair arms, his version of a handshake. Mr. Kestner, he said, your punctuality does you credit. Please sit. I prefer conversation conducted without circulation. Kestner didn't sit immediately. He took the measure of the room, then of Wolfe, then finally of the rest of us. Fritz by the kitchen archway, Caldwell pale as a ghost by the wall. I didn't expect an audience, he said. You will find mine sufficient, Wolfe replied. The others are witnesses to prevent misunderstanding. Kestner's gaze flicked to Caldwell, paused, and slid back with no sign of surprise. So the dead clerk has resurrected himself. Congratulations. Caldwell half rose, then sank back. You sent that body to replace me. I sent nothing, Kestner said smoothly. I heard about the unfortunate identification, but if you insist on living, it's no business of mine. Your business, Wolfe said, seems habitually to involve the dead. Miss Dale, Miss Farrow, and the anonymous double. I wonder whether you find mortality convenient. Kestner's mouth twitched. I came because I was told you were spreading unflattering theories about me. I intend to put an end to them. Splendid, Wolfe said. I favor conclusions. I took a seat on the arm of the couch, ready for whatever kind of fireworks Wolfe's calm voice usually preceded. The air felt taut enough to hum. You managed, Wolfe said, to remain silent partner of Kestner and Dale while draining it through dummy imports routed via your own subsidiaries. Miss Dale discovered the discrepancy, and you silenced her. Mr. Caldwell's loyalty made him dangerous, so you created a corpse to wear his name. Miss Farrow's passion made her reckless, and you used her to divert suspicion toward her employer. Kestner smiled without humor. An imaginative indictment. You should write novels, Mr. Wolfe. I'm content to read the evidence. What evidence? Wolfe gestured toward the glass plate on his desk. Ink. Imported under your authorization. Volatile compound included, illegal for domestic sale. It ignites under heat or friction. You used it on the letters that terrified Mr. Caldwell. A tidy demonstration of guilt combusting itself. Kestner leaned forward, curiosity overtaking arrogance. And where, pray, did you find such a forensic revelation? In my client's lap, Wolfe said. Quite literally, the residue remains. Kestner's smile cooled. You'll forgive me if I don't accept chemistry lessons from an orchid fancier. I require no forgiveness, Wolfe said. Merely confirmation. You might oblige by describing how you selected the man used to impersonate Caldwell. A coincidence too precise demands orchestration. Kestner stood then, voice silk over steel. You're overreaching, Wolfe. Caldwell was unstable. His resignation proved it. My firm will issue a statement tomorrow, clearing my name. If you persist, I'll see you in court. Wolfe didn't blink. If you depart now, Inspector Kramer will see you in custody. You're under observation. That one hit. Kestner's glance darted to the window, then to me. I'd moved 2 steps closer without thinking. Observation? He said lightly. I see none. Of course not, Wolfe murmured. Mr. Panzer is discreet. He followed your cab from Madison Avenue. You brought no lawyer, an oversight suggesting confidence. That is good. Confidence makes men careless. Kestner's right hand slipped into his coat pocket. I drew mine first, the .38 clearing leather, with an easy sigh. Don't, I said. Even if it's just a handkerchief, it's a bad night for misunderstandings. He froze, then withdrew the hand, empty. The fingers flexed once, as though testing their own judgment. I'll have you both charged with intimidation, he said. Do, Wolfe said. But before you go, answer one question. Why duplicate Caldwell's death so crudely? You could have vanished him through embezzlement alone. Kestner hesitated. Because Verna wasn't supposed to die, he said finally. It was an accident. She fell. Her father panicked. I only tried to clean the mess. The rest spiraled. So you invented a ghost to chase another, I said. He turned on me. I kept the company afloat. Dale was useless, his daughter sentimental. Do you know what sentiment costs in business? Yes, Wolfe said softly. The price of 3 lives so far. The silence after that could have frozen beer. Wolfe's tone didn't rise. It sank, pulling the room with it. You will call Inspector Kramer, he said to me, and inform him that Mr. Kestner has been detained on suspicion of multiple homicide and fraud. He will find our visitor cooperative. Kestner straightened. If you think I'll sit here while you will, Wolfe said. You have exhausted your alternatives. Sit. The man sat. Not because Wolfe yelled. He never needed to. It was the quiet authority, the inevitability that made resistance feel foolish. I called Kramer, keeping my voice as steady as the line crackle would allow. 10 minutes later, the doorbell announced the cavalry. Kramer walked in looking suspiciously gratified. Well, the great importer himself. Wolfe, you sure know how to pick 'em. I cultivate discernment, Wolfe said. Kindly remove him before he contaminates my rug. Kestner didn't resist as the cuffs clicked. He threw one look back, not at Wolfe, but at Caldwell, a look with enough bitterness to curdle cream. You think this clears you? You'll always be the fool who wrote the confession. Caldwell's voice was low. Maybe. But at least it was mine. The door shut behind them. Wolfe exhaled like a boiler venting steam. I holstered the gun and turned toward him. You had Saul outside the whole time? Of course, Wolfe said. Even a modest intellect anticipates unpleasant visitors. Mr. Panzer followed the cab to verify its contents before knocking. Meaning if Kestner hadn't come, you'd have sent for him anyway. I dislike unfinished arithmetic, Wolfe said. Caldwell stood, unsteady but alive in more ways than one. Then it's over. Substantially, Wolfe said. Inspector Kramer will confirm the forensic trail and Mr. Kestner's financial malfeasance. The law will proceed at its customary glacial pace. You, however, will resume your existence with more discretion. Caldwell nodded, the weight starting to lift. I don't know how to thank you. Wolfe lifted a hand. Do not attempt to. Your gratitude would be as clumsy as your earlier duplicity. Mr. Goodwin will see you out. Caldwell looked like he wanted to say something else, but the expression on Wolfe's face discouraged poetry. I walked him to the door. The night air was cool and smelled of washed brick. When I came back, Wolfe was pouring the last of the beer. Satisfied? I asked. He frowned slightly. Satisfaction is the enemy of diligence. Yet, yes. I dropped into the red chair. So what's your verdict on humanity this evening? He drank, wiped his lip, and said, In commerce or conscience, Mr. Goodwin, forgery is still the most popular art. I was halfway to pouring myself a drink when the phone started its third act for the evening. Wolfe gave it a look that suggested the instrument had finally exceeded its lifetime allowance of interruptions. I got there first. Nero Wolfe's residence. The voice was male, hurried, and wearing the tone of someone who knew both Wolfe's reputation and his fee structure. This is Inspector Kramer. You can tell Wolfe his importer just expired. I glanced at Wolfe. Expired how? Cell in the tombs. Poison. Doc says fast acting. Clean. Didn't come from us. Suicide? I asked. That's what the DA will want it to be. You tell Wolfe I don't buy it, and for God's sake, keep him away from the press. He hung up before I could promise anything. Wolfe's eyes hadn't moved from the beer glass. That will be Inspector Kramer, he said. Right. Kestner just joined the majority vote. Wolfe's fingers drummed once against the desk. Premature. Murderers are not so obliging as to remove themselves on cue. I slid into the chair opposite him. Then somebody helped him take his medicine. Precisely. And whoever administered it now controls the narrative. Mr. Dale is in custody, Miss Farrow deceased. Mr. Kestner silenced. Only Mr. Caldwell remains, alive and inconvenient. You think Caldwell's next on the list? Think. Wolfe gave me the look he reserves for rhetorical imbecilities. I observe. The bell interrupted us. A small, sharp ring, nothing dramatic, but enough to make Fritz appear in the doorway before Wolfe could speak. Mr. Wolfe, a gentleman to see you. He insists it's urgent. Name? He would not say, sir. He carries a police envelope. That got both our attention. Wolfe sighed. Show him. The visitor was short, broad, and rain-damp, with a fedora tilted against suspicion. He handed me the envelope like it was burning through his fingers. From Inspector Kramer, he said. He told me to deliver it in person. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet, folded once, and a small plastic bag containing a pill wrapped in tissue. The note read, Found in Kestner's cell. Autopsy confirms cyanide. Source unknown. Check handwriting enclosed. See, the handwriting, scrawled on the prison requisition slip, wasn't Kestner's. It was neat, looped, unmistakably feminine. I passed it to Wolfe. Recognize it? He held it under the light, adjusted his glasses, and said, Miss Verna Dale. I waited for him to elaborate. He didn't. That's impossible, I said. She's still dead. Yes, yet her penmanship perseveres. The messenger cleared his throat. Inspector said he'd call within the hour. Inform him, Wolfe said, that he will not need to. I shall call him. The man nodded and left with the speed of someone retreating from a superior species. Wolfe turned the slip over twice. Archie, the letter that ignited. Was it destroyed completely? Down to the last curl of ash. Pity, but this... He tapped the note. This was written by the same hand, the same ink. I leaned forward, meaning someone's been recycling Miss Dale's ghost for a reason. Indeed. And the reason, I fear, is more complex than fraud. We are dealing not with greed alone, but with devotion, obsessive, posthumous devotion. Someone in love with her, or with what she represented. Wolfe rose, something he did rarely enough to make furniture notice. Retrieve Mr. Caldwell. Immediately. Fritz went at once. Wolfe began pacing, 2 steps left, 1 right, the brownstone's version of an earthquake warning. Caldwell appeared a minute later, eyes weary, shirt creased with the exhaustion of borrowed safety. What's happened now? Wolfe gestured him to a chair. Mr. Kestner is dead. Caldwell stared. Dead. But how? Poison. Incarcerated yet poisoned, which suggests either access from within or indulgence from without. Both are instructive. More to the point, this was found. He handed over the slip. Caldwell's fingers trembled. This is Verna's writing? Yes. And now you will tell me precisely who besides Miss Dale might have possessed samples sufficient to duplicate it. He thought. Her father, of course. Miss Farrow and, her cousin, a woman named Clara Mendel. She handled Verna's estate after the funeral. Wolfe looked at me. Locate her. I was halfway to the phone when it rang again. I caught it on reflex. Goodwin. The voice was female, low and steady. Don't look for me, Mr. Goodwin. It's too late. I only wanted her name cleared. Who is this? You already know. The line went dead. I turned to Wolfe. If that wasn't Clara Mendel, I'll shave my head. She will not need us to find her, Wolfe said. She will find Mr. Caldwell. Caldwell flinched. She blames me? She adored her cousin. You were the man she deemed responsible for Verna's disgrace, and now, having avenged the wrong man's death, she seeks to conclude her liturgy. I moved to the window. The rain had thickened into a white hiss against the glass. You think she's on her way here? I think she's already nearby, Wolfe said. Archie, the alley gate? Barred since Kestner. Excellent. Fritz, the front door, unlock but remain in the hall. If she arrives, admit her immediately. Yes, sir. The house went taut. Wolfe sat, eyes half closed, head tilted as if listening to the air itself. Caldwell shifted on the couch, every breath too loud. It took 7 minutes. The bell rang again. One press, firm and final. Fritz opened the door. The woman who entered was in her early 30s. Rain-dark hair plastered against her face, eyes bright enough to cut through fog. She carried her composure like a shield and a small pistol like punctuation. Clara Mendel, Wolfe said. She looked at him, then at Caldwell. You should have stayed dead, she said. I moved a fraction closer. Wolfe's voice was a thread of calm. Miss Mendel, before you act, consider your premise. You sought justice for your cousin. The man you hold responsible did not betray her. He obeyed her. Her grip wavered. He let her die. He did not push her from the balcony, Wolfe said. Nor did Kestner. He merely exploited her fall, the one who maintained the illusion, who kept her alive in forged words. Is you a misplaced guardian? She blinked fast, the tears fighting the rage. You can't know that. On the contrary, Wolfe said. The ink. Only one person continued to receive shipments after her death, Miss Mendel. You handled her correspondence, maintained her estate. Your devotion became your delusion. She raised the gun toward Caldwell. She loved him. He made her ashamed. I took one step forward. And killing him will make her proud. Her breath hitched, the gun trembling. Wolfe didn't move. Miss Mendel, he said, love does not require resurrection. It requires release. Something broke then, the kind of silence that drops between heartbeats before a choice. The gun sagged, then fell. I caught it mid-air. She crumpled onto the carpet, face hidden, the sobs more relief than sorrow. Caldwell sat frozen. I never meant to. Wolfe raised a hand. Mr. Caldwell, spare me remorse. It is contagious. He turned to me. Call Kramer again. Inform him we have concluded his suicide case with a living culprit and a tolerable morale. I reached for the phone, the receiver cool in my hand. And what moral is that? Wolfe poured what remained of his beer and said that confessions, like ghosts, are only dangerous when unanswered. Kramer didn't wait for an invitation this time. He pushed the door open with the confidence of a man too angry to care about hinges. The front hall smelled faintly of wet wool and burnt adrenaline. He took one look at Clara Mendel, still on the couch with Fritz's handkerchief crumpled in her fist, and barked, "What in blazes is this? I leave you with one body, and you keep manufacturing new suspects like orchids?" She manufactured herself, I said. Walked in with a gun and a confession complex. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. "Inspector, you might lower your voice. Miss Mendel is not deaf, merely deluded." Kramer strode in, coat dripping, jaw set for combat. "Deluded, huh? She admits poisoning Kestner." "She will," Wolfe said, "if you grant her 5 minutes of coherence. At present, she's in the aftermath of catharsis." I said, "Translation, she cracked before she fired." Kramer growled, "I'll take cracked over dead." "All right, Miss Mendel, talk. You killed Kestner." She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the empty space between her hands. "He sent the letters," she whispered. "He used Verna's name to torment Leonard. I couldn't stand it. He laughed about her, said she was weak." Wolfe interjected, "And so you corrected his arrogance with cyanide. Admirable symmetry, if misguided." Her head jerked toward him. "You think I'm mad?" "No," Wolfe said. "I think you were efficient. Madness is untidy. Kramer's pencil scratched against his notebook. How'd you get the poison into him? I mailed it, she said. He expected a message from his lawyer. I wrote one in Werner's hand and enclosed a capsule. Said to swallow it if he wanted peace. Hell, Kramer muttered, and he did it. She nodded once, slow and final. Okay, Kramer said, snapping the notebook shut. That's confession enough for me. Let's go. Fritz moved aside as the uniforms came in. They lifted her gently, though she didn't resist or speak. The door closed behind them with a sound like an exhausted sigh. Kramer lingered, his hat low over his eyes. You know, Wolfe, one of these nights you're going to run out of people willing to confess under your roof. Unlikely, Wolfe said. The supply is inexhaustible. He turned to his desk, rearranging papers that didn't need rearranging. I knew that motion. It meant his mind wasn't done chewing. Kramer eyed him. Don't tell me there's still another angle. There always is, Wolfe said. Miss Mendel's act concludes the visible sequence, not the underlying one. Kramer frowned. She killed Kestner. Case shut. Superficially, Wolfe said. But she believed Kestner wrote the letters, and she was mistaken. He exploited them, certainly, but he did not author them. Then who did? The same person who supplied Miss Mendel with Werner's handwriting. I said, that narrows it down to the ghost herself. Or someone profiting from her ghost, Wolfe said. Consider, the letters resumed only after Kestner's first arrest. They goaded Miss Mendel toward violence, thereby erasing the last witness to his fraud. Who gains by that? Kramer rubbed his temples. Dale's in jail. His company's finished. Kestner's dead. Mendel's confessing. Nobody's left to gain. Ah, Wolfe murmured. But Mr. Dale's firm still holds import contracts, assets transferable through power of attorney. Who controls that now? Kramer froze. You're telling me the old man's lawyer... Precisely, Wolfe said. Mr. Harmon, counsel of record for both Dale and the estate. A convenient spider at the center of every web. I whistled softly. You think Harmon sent the letters, framed Kestner, and steered Mendel into doing the cleanup? He required chaos to consolidate control, Wolfe said. Each death simplified his paperwork. Kramer's tone flattened. You've got proof? Only inference, Wolfe said. But inference is the skeleton of fact. We can adorn it with evidence soon enough. Kramer sighed. All right, I'll pick him up. If you're wrong, I never am, Wolfe said. Kramer left muttering something unprintable but respectful. The silence afterward had the weight of a closing file. I sat back. So you just indicted another man without moving an inch. You ever get tired of being right? I tire of repetition, Wolfe said. It is not my fault the world insists upon patterns. Fritz returned with fresh beer for him and coffee for me. Shall I prepare something for dinner, sir? Roast capon, Wolfe said. We have earned indulgence. I lifted my cup. I'll drink to that. But if Harmon's the last domino, I'd prefer to see him fall before dessert. Wolfe made a sound somewhere between a grunt and a hum. Your appetite will not be deferred long. Mr. Harmon is ambitious but unimaginative. He will attempt to preempt his arrest with a performance. Meaning what? Meaning he will come here. I turned toward the window, half expecting to see headlights on the wet pavement. You really think he'll walk into the same trap everyone else did? Hubris, Wolfe said, is as reliable as hunger. He wasn't wrong. 15 minutes hadn't passed before the bell rang again, sharp, impatient, the rhythm of authority, trying to sound polite. Fritz announced him, Mr. Harmon, sir. Of course, Wolfe said. Admit him. The man who entered looked like an accountant carved from marble. Sleek suit, thin lips, umbrella folded like a sword. He nodded at Wolfe with professional courtesy. Good evening, Mr. Wolfe. I've just come from the precinct. A most unpleasant business. Indeed, Wolfe said. Sit. I thought you might appreciate clarification before rumor distorts it. Proceed, Wolfe said. I understand you've involved yourself in my client's misfortunes. I represent the Dale family and now, unfortunately, the estate of Mr. Kestner. I'd like to minimize unnecessary speculation. I said, You mean keep your name out of it? He gave me a thin smile. Mr. Goodwin, I respect your zeal, but you misjudge me. I'm here to offer cooperation. Splendid, Wolfe said. Then you will explain how Miss Mendel acquired Verna Dale's handwriting samples, files entrusted to your firm. Harmon's eyes narrowed. You assume too much. I deduce, Wolfe said. You withheld originals after the estate inventory. You used them to manufacture letters, thus coercing Dale into dependency and Kestner into scapegoating. Each successive death simplified your acquisition of their contracts. Miss Mendel's hysteria completed the ledger. Harmon stood. That's absurd. Sit, Wolfe said. He did, involuntarily. I moved slightly, just enough to make him aware of me. Wolfe's voice lowered, smooth as molasses and twice as heavy. You came here tonight because you sensed your liability tightening. You wished to gauge whether I had reached you. I have. Harmon's knuckles whitened on the umbrella handle. You can't prove a thing. No, Wolfe said. But Inspector Kramer can, once I inform him of the paper trail in your own office. Specifically, the notarized power transfers signed under Miss Dale's forged hand. I've telephoned his aide. The warrant is en route. That did it. The umbrella twitched, a glint of metal showing where there shouldn't have been any. I was faster. The .38 came up and the umbrella clattered to the floor, its hidden blade gleaming under the lamp. Really, I said, you lawyers need subtler stationery. Harmon's shoulders slumped. All right, you win. Wolfe rang the bell. Fritz, the inspector may enter. Kramer appeared in the doorway as if conjured. You called it again, Wolfe. An inevitable deduction, Wolfe said. Human greed, unlike handwriting, is never forged successfully. Kramer cuffed Harmon and waved his men in. As they led him out, the house felt suddenly larger, emptier, clean again. I stretched. That makes 5 confessions, 3 corpses, and 1 genius too calm for statistics. Wolfe looked mildly offended. 2 corpses, Mr. Goodwin. The others merely confessed to being human. Kramer's men had barely cleared the front steps when Wolfe exhaled through his nose, a quiet sound but enough to shake off 2 hours of intellectual combat. He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed, fingers tented, and muttered, Pah! The stench of venality lingers longer than the men who exhale it. Good, I said, holstering the .38. Because I'm keeping the windows closed till morning. Wolfe ignored that. Fritz, he said, see that Mr. Goodwin receives a cognac. His contribution tonight was regrettably manual, but necessary. Fritz smiled faintly and disappeared toward the kitchen. You know, I said, if you ever decide to frame a painting, that umbrella blade would make a good letter opener. It was not a weapon of artistry, Wolfe said. It was desperation disguised as gentility. Mr. Harmon, like most predators, mistook refinement for immunity. I sank into the red chair. And now that he's in Kramer's net, does that mean we can finally sleep? Sleep, yes, Wolfe said. But rest? No. Not until the narrative is complete. I grinned. Narrative. You sound like a man reviewing his own legend. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. Every investigation is a narrative, Mr. Goodwin. The conclusion is worthless unless its moral is explicit. Fine. Then what's the moral this time? That affection, untethered from reason, breeds destruction. Deep, I said. But personally, I'll take the moral that crime doesn't pay. At least not on this block. He gave me a look that said I'd missed the point, which, by my calculation, made us even. The front door opened again, soft but certain. I started to reach for the gun until Fritz's voice called, Inspector Kramer requests another word. Wolfe grunted. I thought the evening was mercifully concluded. Kramer came in with his hat in hand, and a look that meant his day had just grown a new ulcer. Harmon's talking, he said. Of course, Wolfe murmured. He says he's got letters, real ones, signed by Verna Dale after her supposed death. Claims she didn't die in that fall. Claims you've all been chasing shadows while the lady herself skipped the country. That froze the air for a second. Even Fritz stopped mid-step behind him. I looked at Wolfe. He's bluffing. Wolfe's lids lowered. Possibly. But if he possesses forged correspondence of sufficient quality to deceive a notary, the bluff will stand until disproved. Kramer stepped closer, voice low. Wolfe, I've seen the papers. They look damn real. He says they prove she was alive for weeks after her funeral. You ever hear of anyone faking a death that neatly? Yes, Wolfe said. Often. It is a common ambition among those who cannot endure the consequences of their living deeds. I said, if she's alive, then Mendel just confessed to avenging a woman who doesn't need avenging. Kramer scowled. Exactly. Which means I've got a jail full of people confessing to crimes that might not exist. Then, Wolfe said calmly, it appears, Inspector, you have an abundance of honesty and a shortage of verification. Kramer's patience thinned audibly. You think Harmon forged those letters too? I think he lacked the artistry, Wolfe said. Forging death is an enterprise that requires emotional precision. Harmon was a technician, not an artist. Someone else completed his design. Who? Miss Dale herself, Wolfe said. Fritz gasped softly. I just stared. You're telling me she's alive after all that? Alive, possibly. Living, doubtfully, Wolfe said. But if she is, she has outwitted us all. Kramer rubbed his chin. Suppose you're right. Where do I look? Where she ceased to be Verna Dale and became someone else, Wolfe said. A new signature, a new life funded by her inheritance. Administered, of course, by Mr. Harmon. That's a big supposition, I said. It is a necessity, Wolfe said. Every false death demands an accomplice willing to certify the corpse. Harmon, having arranged her escape, found her inconvenient once his profits dwindled. Miss Mendel's vengeance only accelerated the reckoning. Kramer looked between us. If you've got a lead, spill it. I don't chase ghosts. Neither do I, Wolfe said, but we will chase accountants. Archie, the financial registry for Kestner and Dale. Pull the foreign remittance records filed under subsidiary code D47. You will find transactions to Switzerland beginning 3 months prior to Miss Dale's death and continuing under the name Valerie Demar. Kramer blinked. Demar? A rearrangement of letters from Verna Dale, Wolfe said. An unimaginative pseudonym for an imaginative escape. I was already at the phone. You want me to confirm it? Immediately. Kramer threw up his hands. Fine. If you two dig a living corpse out of Zurich, send me a postcard. He stomped out, muttering about frauds who wouldn't stay buried. Wolfe sat motionless, eyes closed, as if listening to something internal unwind. I dialed. It took a while, but the registry clerk owed me a favor from a poker night he didn't remember losing. When I hung up, Wolfe's eyes opened. Well, there's a Valerie Demar with a trust account opened 6 days after Verna's funeral. Deposits total about 20 grand. Signature on file. Describe it. Same loops, same pressure, same... Hell, Wolfe, it's hers. He nodded once, slow. So the ghost breathes. Fritz, who'd been silent, whispered, But why would she let others die? Because, Wolfe said softly, her resurrection depended on their ruin. Kestner laundered her funds. Harmon managed the concealment, and when the edifice trembled, she permitted them to be consumed by their own greed. A flawless equation. I leaned back. Except for Mendel, she didn't account for devotion. No one does, Wolfe said. The phone rang again. I caught it. A woman's voice, calm and precise. "Tell Mr. Wolfe that Valerie DeMar appreciates his efficiency. It's a pity about the others, but efficiency always costs something." I held the receiver against my chest. "It's her." Wolfe's tone didn't rise. "Put her through." I lifted it back. "You're speaking with him." Her voice was clear, almost amused. "You're quick, Mr. Wolfe. I thought I'd left no footprints." "You left one," Wolfe said. "A man's conscience, it tends to track mud. I suppose you want me returned to the world of the living." "That would be equitable," Wolfe said. "The law prefers to imprison flesh, not fables." She laughed, light, chilling. "Then tell the law I drowned with my sins. I assure you the dead travel faster." The line went silent. I stared at the phone. "You think she's bluffing?" "She may be," Wolfe said. "Or she may be somewhere over the Atlantic, en route to a country less fastidious about ghosts." Fritz whispered, "Then she escapes?" "For now," Wolfe said. "But she carries the weight of perfection, and perfection is the heaviest disguise of all." I said, "Meaning someday she'll write another letter." He looked at me, the faintest trace of satisfaction easing his features. "Precisely. And when she does, Mr. Goodwin, we will be here to read it." The silence that followed her call was the kind you could measure in heartbeats. Fritz had stopped halfway to collecting the empty glasses. Wolfe's hand froze on the armrest, and I was still holding the receiver, hearing nothing but the soft static where her voice had been. "She hung up clean," I said finally. "No click, no breath, just gone." Wolfe exhaled slowly, his nostrils flaring. "A woman who plans her own death once does not risk untidy farewells." "She sounded pretty tidy to me," I said, hanging up. "Smooth, polite, and about 2 degrees colder than an ice box." "She is exultant," Wolfe murmured. "Victory gives her composure." "Victory. She's wanted by half the precinct and one very irritated importer's ghost. You call that victory?" He gave me the faintest look of irritation. "You are conflating consequence with perception. In her mind, the ledger is balanced. Every participant in her deception has paid. Except herself." Fritz spoke softly from the doorway. "Should I call Inspector Kramer, sir?" "No," Wolfe said. "He would be incapable of listening, and I prefer the luxury of thought before the intrusion of indignation." I crossed to the window, watching the street through the narrow slice of lamplight. A taxi was idling a few houses down, its engine humming like a patient animal. "We might not need to call him," I said. "She could be sitting right there, waiting to see if you take the bait." "Unlikely," Wolfe said. "She called from elsewhere, perhaps an airport lounge, perhaps a train compartment. She has rehearsed this too thoroughly to indulge in dramatics." "Well then," I said, "either she's halfway to Zurich, or she's bluffing hard enough to make it sound like first-class seating." Wolfe's gaze went distant, that peculiar focus that meant his mind was rearranging furniture the rest of us couldn't see. "Archie," he said, "fetch the file labeled Dale Estate, Correspondence. 3rd drawer, left cabinet." I pulled it out. Inside were carbon copies of every document we'd seen, letters, invoices, Kestner's shipping records, and one odd piece I didn't remember. A page of faint, elegant script beginning, "To whom it may concern." "This one wasn't part of the earlier set," I said. Wolfe nodded. "Miss Dale's original confession, the one Caldwell claimed to have burned. I retrieved it from the carbon book on your desk. You neglected to remove it before posting the false copy." I stared at him. "You mean you've had the original the whole time?" "Had, yes. Possessed, no. I left it in my drawer until it chose to reveal its significance." I unfolded the page. The handwriting was delicate but assured, each line spaced evenly, the kind of control that only guilt could sharpen. Wolfe said, "Read aloud." I did. "To whom it may concern, I have decided to tell the truth before others do it for me. The thefts were not for gain, but for freedom. The company is my father's, but the debt is mine. To live under another's signature is not to live at all. I looked up. That doesn't sound like suicide. It sounds like someone writing her own exit visa. Precisely, Wolfe said. A declaration of independence masquerading as remorse. Miss Dale was never confessing. She was announcing a disappearance. Mr. Caldwell misread it, and the others built tragedy upon his error. Then what's the move? Call Kramer. Tell him his corpse count just got reduced? No, Wolfe said. Not yet. If she is alive, she will attempt to retrieve this document. It is the only surviving artifact that could expose her. We will oblige her with opportunity. I smiled. You mean bait the ghost with her own words? He inclined his head. You will place an advertisement in the morning papers. Confession found. Verification required. Apply in person. Nero Wolfe, Brownstone, 35th Street. The notice will circulate by noon. By evening she will call again. Or send someone who will. I frowned. You think she'll risk that? She cannot allow a contradiction to survive her fiction. For her legend to endure, all confessions must be hers alone. Fritz cleared his throat. Sir, if she is dangerous. She is desperate, not dangerous, Wolfe said. But we shall accommodate both possibilities. Archie, you will prepare the necessary precautions. That meant the revolver went back in the desk drawer nearest my chair. The front gate was locked, but the door left unlatched, and Fritz stationed himself at the kitchen window with the phone line clear to Kramer's private number. The clock edged past 1 a.m. when the next knock came. Light, deliberate, the sound of gloves on wood. Wolfe's eyes opened. Attend, Archie. I moved to the door and pulled it open halfway. The woman standing outside wore a hooded raincoat, her face shadowed by the street lamp. She smiled faintly, as though she'd been expected all along. I read your advertisement, she said. It was most intriguing. Her voice was unmistakable. The same smooth calm from the phone, the same poise Verna Dale had probably used to sell lies over breakfast. Come in, I said, stepping back. She entered, water glistening on her sleeve like scattered punctuation. Wolfe didn't rise, but his gaze was steady. Miss Dale, he said. She lowered the hood. I prefer Valerie now. It's easier to spell. Very well, Wolfe said. You have come for your confession. She smiled. You make it sound like communion. Perhaps it is, Wolfe said. The sacrament of truth. I handed her the envelope. She opened it, eyes scanning the familiar script. The flicker in her pupils was tiny, but enough. Recognition, ownership, memory. So, she said softly, it survived after all. It survived everyone else, Wolfe said. Now it belongs to the living author. She looked at him. And what do you intend to do with it? Return it, Wolfe said, in exchange for one thing. Honesty. Did you kill anyone? Her lips curved. No, they killed themselves in pieces. Fear, greed, love, they did the work for me. I merely let them. Then why call? I asked. Why keep feeding the fire? She glanced at me, the smile fading. Because silence is unbearable. Even ghosts need to be heard. Wolfe's tone softened almost imperceptibly. And now that you have spoken. She folded the paper and tucked it into her coat. Now I go back to being dead. That would be unwise, Wolfe said. The inspector will not appreciate resurrections without documentation. She tilted her head. You could stop me. You won't. No, Wolfe said. You have already paid, but understand, the law cannot bury you twice. Sooner or later, it will exhume you. She nodded once. Not as agreement, but as prophecy. Then I'll make sure there's nothing left to dig up. I moved toward her, but she stepped back, a single precise motion, and was through the door before I reached it. By the time I opened it, the street was empty except for the retreating echo of heels and the hiss of tires taking her away. I turned back. You let her go. Wolfe stared at the empty chair she'd vacated. We apprehended the truth, Mr. Goodwin. The rest is merely its shadow. I shut the door and leaned against it. So the woman walks, the case closes, and Kramer's ulcer grows another inch. An acceptable outcome, Wolfe said. He poured the last of his beer, lifted it slightly, and added, There are victories too costly to celebrate. This one we shall simply acknowledge. The glass clinked softly against the desk, and for the first time that night, the brownstone felt very quiet, as if the air itself had learned discretion. Wolfe didn't move for a long while after she left. He sat there, motionless except for the slow rise and fall of his chest, eyes half shuttered, as though watching the ghost retreat through the inner folds of his own mind. The lamplight made his features look carved rather than alive. Fritz tiptoed back in, took one look at him, and vanished again like a well-trained shadow. I poured myself a drink from the sideboard. Nothing fancy, just something that didn't ask questions, and said, You do realize you just let the only living suspect in this carnival of corpses walk out your door? Yes, Wolfe said without opening his eyes. I prefer my quarry alive and reflective. The dead are such unhelpful conversationalists. She's not going to reflect, I said. She's going to vanish again, and if Kramer ever finds out you gave her a head start, he'll skin us both. That would require wit, Wolfe murmured. And Kramer's endowments lie in endurance, not artistry. I set the glass down harder than I meant to. Come on, Wolfe, you've just wrapped up a case where the victim turned out to be alive. The murderer became the moralist, and the cops don't even know what century to file it under. You can't just sit there like it's an overdue tax return. He opened his eyes then, slow as shutters on a heavy window. What would you have me do, Mr. Goodwin? Pursue a woman whose crime was the desire to live freely in a world that required her to die decorously? I'd call it obstruction of justice, I said. Justice is a fiction, he replied, and I am weary of fictions. That one landed with more weight than I liked. Wolfe wasn't given to melancholy, but when it came, it clung like humidity. I watched him rub his temple with one finger, a gesture I'd seen maybe 3 times in all the years I'd worked for him, and every time meant he'd met something human enough to unsettle him. She fooled everyone, I said. Even you. Correction, he said softly. She amused me. The difference is substantial. I started to reply, but the phone rang again, abrupt and loud, like the house had been waiting to exhale. I reached it before the second ring. Nero Wolfe's office. This is Kramer. The voice was granite as usual, but under it there was a crack of disbelief. I just got a wire from the State Department. A woman using the name Valerie DeMar boarded a flight to Lisbon 2 hours ago. Cash ticket, no luggage. Yeah, we figured she'd take the scenic route, I said. I don't care about scenic, Kramer barked. I care that she was declared legally dead 3 months ago, which makes her a corpse with a passport. And I want to know why Wolfe didn't call me the second she walked out of his house. I looked at Wolfe. He lifted his chin, unbothered. Tell him, he said. Because, I told Kramer, he was cultivating patience. I'll cultivate your head on a wall, Kramer snapped. You tell that fat philosopher I'm coming over. He hung up before I could hang him. Wolfe sighed. The man's passion for punctuality is pathological. Fritz, prepare another bottle. Mr. Goodwin, you will fetch a chair for the inspector. One that will creak at every movement. I did. And when Kramer stormed in 15 minutes later, dripping rain and resentment, the brownstone was ready for him like an ambush staged by good manners. Where is she? He demanded. In transit, Wolfe said, possibly sipping brandy at 30,000 feet. Kramer glared at me. You let her go. I watched her leave, I said. There's a nuance. He jabbed a finger at Wolfe. You're going to tell me why. I've already explained it to myself, Wolfe said. I see no reason to repeat the exercise. Don't get cute. You had a living witness to at least 2 murders. Incorrect, Wolfe said. She committed none. Her hands are clean. Her conscience is not. But conscience is not actionable in law. Kramer's jaw worked. You think I'm filing a report that says a dead woman came back to life just long enough to exonerate herself and flee to Europe? I should think the narrative will delight your superiors, Wolfe said. It has everything but romance. Kramer barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. You've got nerve, Wolfe, I'll give you that. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. But one day, you'll protect the wrong person, and when you do, I'll be there to close the door. He slammed it on his way out. The echo rolled through the hall like a disapproving sermon. Fritz reappeared, serene as a saint, with the cognac. Wolfe gestured toward my chair. Pour him a measure. He has earned it by proximity. I didn't argue. The clock struck 2. The street outside had gone empty, the kind of quiet that only New York can make sound suspicious. Wolfe sipped his drink and said, Mr. Goodwin, remind me tomorrow to send Mr. Caldwell a note. I suspect he will be reading the morning papers with renewed confusion. He's probably halfway to Kansas by now, I said, and good luck explaining to him that his late girlfriend's flying coach to Lisbon. She will not stay in Lisbon, Wolfe said. She will travel on to Geneva, where her money waits. She will buy another name, another life, and perhaps even the illusion of peace. But she will not find it. Because of you, I asked. Because of herself, he said. Self-invention is the most exquisite cruelty. I leaned back, watching the smoke coil above the lamp. You think she'll write again? Oh, she will, Wolfe said. Her vanity demands it. She will send one final letter, perhaps a year from now, to some official or some old friend, just to prove that death did not diminish her eloquence. And when she does, the inspector will think of me and curse. Then maybe, I said, we should keep a spare envelope handy. He almost smiled. An excellent precaution. Fritz returned to clear the glasses, his steps soft on the carpet. Wolfe leaned back, the weight of the night finally pressing him toward weariness. Archie, extinguish the lights, he said. We have reached the perimeter of understanding, and beyond that lies only journalism. I flipped the switch. The room sank into a half-shadow, the faint glow from the street lamp stretching across the orchids. Wolfe's silhouette was a dark outline against the wall, massive, unmoving, as if the brownstone itself had grown around him. In the quiet, I thought I could still hear the last echo of her heels on the wet pavement. Fading, deliberate, not hurried, like a confession walking away from the priest. Wolfe's voice came softly through the dark. Mr. Goodwin. Yeah? Let us agree never again to accept a client whose letter precedes them. Fine by me, I said. Next time, I want a case that starts with something normal, like a body. He made a small sound, not quite laughter, not quite sigh. I shall hold you to that. The clock chimed again, steady and certain. Somewhere out there, a woman who had mastered dying was beginning once more the impossible task of living. And inside the brownstone, Nero Wolfe closed his eyes, folded his hands, and accepted, just this once, the unfinished. The chime of the clock hadn't finished echoing when Wolfe opened his eyes again. Mr. Goodwin, he said, voice low, as if continuing the thought he'd ended with. There is one imperfection left. I'd been halfway through locking the front door. If it's the human race, you can't fix that tonight. Closer to home, he said. The truth still contains a void, and I detest vacuums. Fetch the envelope she took. I turned, eyebrows up. The one she tucked into her coat pocket. You must have missed the part where she walked off with it. He smiled faintly. No, I did not. The one she took was not the one she sought. That froze me halfway to the desk. You switched it? I substituted a facsimile. Fritz assisted with the carbon. I whistled. So she walked out thinking she'd reclaimed her own words, and what she's got instead is blank paper, Wolfe said. A confession to nothing, which means the genuine document remains here, intact. I looked at him. That's not just foresight, that's temptation with ink. Temptation is always instructive, Wolfe said. Her reaction confirmed her authorship, and it may serve one more purpose. He gestured toward the safe built into the wall behind the globe bar. Deposit it there, under my folder marked Metaphysics. The irony pleases me. I did as told, feeling the weight of that thin paper like it might ignite from touch. When the safe clicked shut, Wolfe poured himself a final measure of beer and said, "Now we can rest." "I thought you didn't rest until the moral was clear." "Ah," he said, "but the moral is sometimes a mirror. Tonight it reflects on us." I waited, because when Wolfe took that tone, it usually meant he was about to produce something that could pass for philosophy if you didn't look too hard at it. He set the glass down. We meddled with a ghost and discovered only ourselves. Curiosity, pity, vanity. The same trio that drives every resurrection. I dislike that symmetry. "Then I'll take a symmetry," I said. "Because Kramer's going to pound on that door again any minute, and that'll break the mood nicely." But it wasn't Kramer who came first. It was the phone, shrill and insistent, cutting the quiet like a knife through soft cheese. I reached for it. "Nero Wolfe's office." The operator's voice crackled. "International line for Mr. Wolfe. Call from Lisbon." I looked up. Wolfe's eyelids twitched once, a fractional concession to surprise. "Put it through," he said. There was a pause, then a faint hum, and her voice, clearer this time, almost languid. "Mr. Wolfe, I thought you'd like to know I landed safely." He didn't rise, didn't blink. "Your courtesy is touching, Miss Dale, though I wonder what it costs you to extend it." "Nothing at all," she said. "You were kind enough to let me keep my fiction." I thought it polite to return the compliment. "Your fiction," Wolfe said, "is incomplete." "Oh, you left your confession behind." There was a small silence on the line, delicate but sharp-edged. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Wolfe's voice was smooth marble. "Then perhaps you will forgive me for notifying the consulate that a woman traveling under a dead name is in possession of falsified documents." "You wouldn't dare." "On the contrary," Wolfe said. "I would dare anything that restores proportion to the world. And you have upset its balance sufficiently for one evening." Her tone cooled by degrees. "What do you want?" "The truth," he said simply. "Did you fall, or were you pushed?" A long breath came through the wire. Then she said almost softly, "Does it matter now?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "Because if you fell, you were a victim. If you jumped, you were an author. I detest confusing the two." Her voice lowered. "I jumped. The railing didn't give. I did. And I lived. That was my first crime." "Your second," Wolfe said, "was perfection. You executed it too well. It left no room for redemption." "You think I wanted redemption?" she asked. "No," Wolfe said, "but you need it. You would not be calling me otherwise." There was another pause. I could hear the faint murmur of an airport terminal behind her, the scrape of luggage, the anonymous hum of movement. "You're a strange man, Mr. Wolfe." "Not strange," he said. "Exact." She laughed then, quietly, almost warmly. "Exact men are dangerous. They see what's missing. Goodbye, Mr. Wolfe." The line went dead. I replaced the receiver and said, "Well, that sounded like goodbye for real this time." Wolfe didn't respond immediately. He looked at the orchid shelf by the window as if expecting it to offer commentary. "She confessed again," he said finally. "Not to the law, but to the air. That will suffice." "You going to tell Kramer?" "No. He will be happier without knowledge. Ignorance occasionally preserves the illusion of justice." I stretched, feeling the stiffness of the night in my shoulders. So we just stop. We conclude, Wolfe corrected. Stopping implies exhaustion. I am merely done. Fritz came in then with a tray. Coffee for me, beer for him, and something aromatic that smelled like quiet celebration. Sir, he said, if I may inquire, do we expect any further visitors this evening? No, Fritz, Wolfe said. Our house is purged. Even the ghosts have departed. That earned him the closest thing Fritz ever gave to a smile. He placed the tray carefully, inclined his head, and vanished again. I took my cup and settled back. You ever wonder, Wolfe, what makes people like her do it? Fake death, erase themselves, run halfway across the world just to prove a point? He looked at me, eyes heavy-lidded but still bright. The same force that makes the living confess to crimes they did not commit. The terror of anonymity. Meaning she'd rather be the world's most elaborate sinner than another forgotten daughter. Precisely. He leaned back, closing his eyes again. And yet, in fleeing her name, she ensured it would never be forgotten. Paradox is a merciless jailer. I grinned. You're starting to sound sentimental. He grunted. Nonsense. I am merely precise in my contempt. The line drew itself closed then. No more phone calls, no more footsteps on the stairs, just the steady pulse of the brownstone returning to its old rhythm. Wolfe spoke once more, without opening his eyes. Mr. Goodwin, burn the advertisement proofs in the morning, and return the carbon paper to the safe. It will remind me, should I ever forget, that even a false confession has its uses. Will do, I said. Anything else? Yes. He shifted slightly, the chair creaking beneath him. Make certain the front door is locked. Already done. Good. He paused, then added, almost inaudibly, I detest goodbyes. I looked at him, the old lion behind his desk, the orchids glowing faintly under their lamp, the smoke curling in deliberate spirals, and thought how many confessions he'd heard, how many endings he'd witnessed, and how every one of them still seemed to surprise him just a little. I said, then we'll call it good night. He didn't answer. But the faint hum of satisfaction in the air told me he'd accepted the compromise. Outside, the city kept its secrets. Inside, Wolfe poured another inch of beer, and I turned out the lights.